Hello and welcome to the Journey to a Dream podcast brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance. Before we meet today's guest, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Lee Bartram from the Andreas Racing Association, who has been absolutely incredible in helping get guests for this podcast. So thank you very much indeed, Lee. So today's guest then, and I'm sure he will be a name that's very familiar to you because the media love him for very good reason. He set himself quite the challenge around the mountain course, and while he hasn't quite achieved it yet, I'm very sure that one day in the future he certainly will. Let's meet him now.
Hello everybody, my name's Michael Russell and I'm an old boy that loved racing motorcycles around the Isle of Man. Back in the day at school, my old science teacher, there was an England cricketer, wicketkeeper called Jack Russell, but I don't think actually that was his name. However, he was a massive cricket fan. Obviously surname Russell, right, you're Jack Russell. And I was like, right, obviously everyone thinks it's a dog, but it's actually nicknamed after a cricketer. So people call me all sorts at work, I'm sure, but Jack is sort of, I introduce myself to Jack. And if people turn around and say Mike or whatever, most of the time I don't respond, you know. So yeah, obviously when we speak to yourselves or in the programme, it's Michael. It's a little bit strange.
You mentioned school there. What was your childhood like? Was there an interest in bikes from an early age?
There was a massive interest in motorcycles from a very early age, and I have to say we don't know where it came from because nobody in my family's ever ridden a motorcycle, and even extended family has ever been interested in motorcycling or motorsport really. But I was infatuated from a baby. I remember looking out of the back seats of this Vauxhall Viva or whatever the hell it was with vinyl seats and sticking to it, you know, when it's really hot and a sunny day. And I must have been 2 or 3 years old before health and safety and you had to wear seat belts. It was like, you know, I'm that old. And I watched these two bikes came up behind the car. I mean, mum drives like an absolute lemon anyway, so we were probably well under the speed limit. It was a simple case of these bikes roared up behind the car and I sort of gave a wave and a thumbs up or whatever I did at 3 years old, and one of them sort of waved back and that was it. I was like, a man in leathers, I love them. You know, it's great. So yeah, 100%. There was a massive infatuation with motorcycles, and unfortunately we didn't sort of get to scratch that itch until very late on in my life really, compared to bike racers, should we say. If you look at the sort of stats, I should never have gone into racing. It was just join the RAF, got my bike licence, did a track day. My actual bike instructor said, look, you know, if you want to sort of learn to go quick safely, get on a track day, and I highly recommend it to anyone really. You know, I'd probably ride a little bit over the speed limit, you know, in 30s at 33.5, but getting on a track day you can really sort of get to grips with the bike. Anyway, we did this one track day, and again obviously that need for speed was there. So yeah, 100%. It was a very simple case of bikes have been in my blood forever, but it wasn't until my sort of mid-20s that I really got to sort of scratch it. And then the sort of bug had already bitten anyway. Obviously, you know, from 3 years old it was instilled, and that early dependency on motorcycles was there. And we just basically, yeah, really gelled with it, should we say. But racing was never on my card. TT was never on my card.
Had you heard of the TT though?
Oh yeah, oh god,
Obviously.
Yeah. I've been watching, you know, on boards and TT reviews and whatever, and wet my knickers over them ever since I was sort of in my teens really. You know, I've still got them actually. I've still got my old DVD player and watch them now. But however, I watched the onboards and was like, well, this is crazy. You know, these guys are obviously very loose behind the ears. For me, it was always just about getting on a motorcycle. I don't know what that sort of dependency was going to turn into. However, it really did sort of turn into, this is now my dependency. The Isle of Man is my dependency. I really am lost without it. So getting onto the boat at Heysham, however you pronounce it, it really is a relief to know that I'm going back here, so I just love it. And
in terms of how this worked in the early years, because you mentioned the RAF, which I imagine doesn't give you a lot of downtime, or I don't know, how did that all fit in?
Oh no, I'm in the RAF. I'm always downtime. No, it's a lovely career. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic. Well, yeah, we sort of left school and did a few other bits and pieces, and same with everything really in my life. I don't know which direction I'm going to take. My father was briefly in, my grandfather was a 36-year warrant officer, so he was joined the RAF. It's an amazing career, and I was like, well, I don't really know what else to do, so let's just do it as a stopgap. But I've loved it. It's been, I've been this is my 23rd year now, so yeah, joined at 19 and then rejoined again back in the day when, after a little car accident, put us out for a bit, so rejoined at 21, and as a driver, yeah, just drive trucks and glorified taxi man, but as a career I've loved it. It's been amazing.
Presumably long stints away from home sometimes?
Yeah, it's got massive benefits, hasn't it? So obviously take the rough with the smooth, and I've got a very understanding family. You know, I literally have had 3 days notice to go away for 6 months, 4 months, whatever it is, and then on other occasions you get a bit more notice. But it was a job, you're like, well, it's brilliant, and then obviously being away from family, it's always hard, but it's harder for them back home, if I'm brutally honest, because I just get on with the job out there and they have to deal with the ramifications of 2 children or whatever they're dealing with back home, not knowing, especially when we're out in the conflict zone, should we say. It was sometimes days, weeks without any contact. So same with the TT, if I'm brutally honest. I spanned for a guy at Manx in whatever year it was, 2012, let's say, I can't remember, but I absolutely hated it. It was the worst experience of my life, and I don't know how they do it. I was like, is he coming back or not? It was horrendous. Didn't like it.
It's interesting for you, though, to have that other perspective, isn't it? And I think that's really important, particularly as we keep hearing in this podcast, is that this is not something you can do without that support. Obviously, you've got team support, but also that family behind you as well.
Is there a time limit on this, by the way?
No, you're fine. You'll be all right.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I mean, if I am...
We'll stop going at 6 hours. We'll be fine.
If I'm waffling on, please just say. Because as soon as I start talking about bikes, I don't ever stop. But yeah, I have experienced it both sides. I've experienced it both sides on the sidecar as well, and that's never going to happen again. But yeah, I mean, the TTs are very unique. I think, well, any motorsport is unique in terms of you have a team or friends and family helping out. I'd lived my dream and they helped me with it.
And you mentioned having 2 children. I think they're still very young at the moment.
I've got 3, actually.
Oh, right,
I've got 3. Sorry, Beth. Yeah, no, I've got 3. Yeah, I keep forgetting the eldest because she's old and she's on her own. She does her own. She's got her own life. So I've got 2 at home, and then I've got 1 that's self-sufficient, shall we say. The other 2 are still in nappies, and we have to look after them. But the old one, yeah, we don't have to do anything with her. She's great.
And any inkling from any of them about following you in the motorcycling?
Do you know what? Billy, my eldest, I gave her every opportunity in terms of, there's a couple of bikes, you know, it was just never in there. But she's a bit like me, she flits between different ideas. Lewis, obviously my boy, he's my only lad. I'd love to say he could be like, you know, Conrad and Dean Harrison to come in racing and stuff, but he's not a Dean Harrison, sadly. I think he's a footballer, which is fine, in my opinion, as long as they've got something that gets their blood and juices flowing, that's it. And Isla, bless her, I mean, she's the nut job out of the lot of them, so potentially she could be the sidecar driver. So yeah, she's the youngest, and I think if she had a bit of coordination, I could actually say, right, we could do this. But she's a girl, she's got no coordination. I'm joking.
Remember that time limit? I think you're done.
See you later.
Going back to what you were saying, is that initially the Isle of Man and TT racing and stuff like that hadn't particularly been on the radar. Then obviously that interest grew, you started watching the onboards. At what point did racing over here on the mountain course become a reality? When
I arrived, actually, yeah. We'd never had an inkling of doing the TT.
And when you say did you have a team at this point?
No. Sorry, I use whatever that is, plural. I'd never had an inkling because I'd watched the onboards. Anyway, joined the RAF. Started riding, started racing, or started doing, did a track day, did some racing, and thoroughly enjoyed it straight away. I was like, and we went fairly well, to be fair. We were racing in a national series as a clubman on a one-make series, and we were, I think, we should have won the championship, but we didn't. We ran out of money with a couple of rounds to go, and then we did the next year, sort of 1 year racing, got my national, went up to do BSB at Superstock, and had a good crack at it. But unfortunately, I mean, my finances would never, we haven't got money behind us, unfortunately, so it was very much a case of do what you can and what you got, and that's my motto now. Second-hand tyres, whatever gets you out on track, and that is genuinely the case. It is, we stretch a budget very well, I think. Probably stretch people's patience as well with it, but anyway, it is what it is. We get out on track and we love it. However, the BSB was obviously the echelons. That's where I wanted to be, and that's obviously, as a young rider getting into racing, right, we're going to be the next Shaky Byrne or whoever it was. However, it was never on the cards because financially we just could never do it. My career as a short circuit racer would have been washed up probably 2 years in, 3 years in. And we went off to Iraq in 07, I think it was, and there was a lad called Gordon Blackley who's now he still rides, and probably still quicker than me, to be fair. He's a phenomenal rider, but he used to do TT for the RAF. Anyway, he rang me up. We were chatting on the phone. He said, the RAF, and they have, between the 3 Tri-Services, they've got a massive history at racing the TT course and being on the island and representing. Between the Tri-Services, I can't remember the stats, but it was only 2 or 3 years in between a 50-year run that someone from the military hasn't been racing the TT course. So anyway, got in touch and said, look, I'm retiring from the Isle of Man. Do you fancy it? You're doing super stock and, you know, we'll take you across and show you the Isle of Man and everything else. I was like, thank you, but no, that is really kind of you to say. And he was a big name, and he still is a big name in the RAF as a motorsport representative. So it was a lovely experience, or, you know, great to actually just chat to him, because again, I'd watched him on these DVDs and stuff. So to actually speak to your heroes, I was like, oh my God, this is Gordon Blackley. So yeah, shout out to Gordon, because he's a true gentleman. So that was it. Thank you, but no. And
why did you say no? You just thought it wasn't for you?
Oh Christ, yeah, absolutely. I'd never been to the Isle of Man, and we'd never sort of seen it live, but watching the onboards, it was definitely a no, because I genuinely thought, how do people even comprehend the speed, the corners, where to be, what do you look at, and everything else. And short circuits like a billiard table, this thing, the old Milky Quail camera on boards, you know, they just rattled me around. So I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. But it probably instilled a little bit of maybe I could do it in terms of in the future. Something must have gone off there a little bit, because, well, actually, I say no, it was just a calamity of errors that we ended up at the TT. I'm very glad it happened. It's all these, like, crossroads in life, which way do you take it? We went to Iraq, and obviously it scupped the whole sort of, I'd have been back for, like, the last 3 rounds of BSB or whatever it would have been. And I was like, it would have been more than that, but your season's done and dusted. And we landed back, you know, dates-wise, we landed back, I think it was 2 weeks before the Manx Grand Prix in 07. So I thought, well, and it was actually while I was in Iraq, I rang the ACU, because you only get like a little phone card to ring back, and it's like 20 minutes a week or whatever you get. And I used this 20 minutes to sort of get this start permission to race here, because obviously we didn't do the prelim races beforehand while I was getting a suntan. So we went off, got this phone card, you know, from the ACU. The first time I sort of spoke to Michelle, and she was fantastic help, always has been ever since. She's amazing at the ACU, and Gary and everyone that works really hard to get this racing across here, massive shout out to them guys, they're amazing. So I spoke to Michelle, and she said, let me put it to the board and we'll speak to them and see, you know, they've done BSB and whatever. So yeah, the ball rolled, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, a bit like our sort of 10 race challenge. That once you sort of put it out there, like the sort of snowball effect goes, and at one stage we wanted to sort of withdraw massively, you know. This year it was really hard sort of building up to it. It was just getting more and more stressful and everything else, but you can't sort of do that, you can't sort of just back out of it. And well, in my opinion, you've sort of set your stall out, let's just go for it, whatever happens. And that was where the TT came from. The Manx had started that ball rolling, so we landed back from Iraq with a lovely healthy suntan, bought a motorcycle, got on a ferry, got lost in Douglas trying to find the paddock, and that was it. And then we followed, and I'll never forget it, we followed Milky Quail, Chris Palmer, whoever else was taking these newcomers out. Chris Palmer's amazing on a bike, you know, absolutely true gentleman as well. So Milky set off first, and our group was the next one out, and Chris hoisted this huge wheelie down Glencrutchley Road and loved life, and I just chased on, and it was just that first lap I came back in and I was like, I'm not doing anything else. If I don't do anything else in life, I've succeeded, because that one lap was just immense. And yeah, follow your dreams, whatever it is, just get out there and do it. And it's one of those things where I say to even my kids now, and that's why I still race, to be fair, is not why I still race because I'm selfish, but I still race and still do the TT. When people say, oh, you know, you shouldn't do it with kids and stuff, I still actually do it, because for me it's an achievement to get to the start line of a TT race. So for me, you're overcoming fears and everything else, and I like to push that sort of, not push the boundaries, but push my limits, because I'm nothing special at all. People meet me and they'll forget about me 2 seconds later, other than my grey hair. But you've got to push life boundaries, whatever it is. So, you know, people say you shouldn't race with kids, but do you know, I'm living my dream, and I want my kids to do the same. I want everyone to do the same, whatever it is. If you want to be a tiddlywink champion, get a board out and start practicing. It's one of them things. I don't know what tiddlywinks is, to be fair, but it sounds amazing. I might give it a go. However, that was it. And that first lap instilled a dream, and I was like, well, I don't want to do anything else.
Not only was it a dream for you, but actually it turns out you were pretty good on the mountain course as well, because you won 2 Manx Grand Prix races, including the 2009 Senior and the 2013 Super Twin. And so that obviously must instill confidence in that dream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it didn't turn out we were that bad. However, 25 people dropped out in front of me, so I won. A bit like the podium yesterday. But yeah, we were okay on a motorcycle, but I just wish I had the time and sort of not finances behind us, but just, well, I suppose it is all bloody finances, isn't it, these days? But, you know, if we had a bit of time on the bike... Is that the Craigna Bar up there?
Yeah, I think you can see it from here.
Bloody hell.
Great view, isn't it?
That's phenomenal. I can't believe you work here every day. I want to move here. I just love the place. I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Do you know, something I spoke to a previous guest on this podcast about was what it takes mentally to do a few laps of the TT course. So I'm just thinking about concentration there. Not that I'm suggesting you just drifted off for a moment. But in terms of that sort of thing, I mean, you start off on Glen Crutchley Road. You have to remember, what is it, over 200 corners and whatever. How on earth do you do that?
I'm not even that clever. And I don't know any of the names hardly. You know, people talked, like we went round Boulogne last night, yesterday in the races, and sort of came in and Stu's there like, right, what's the bike doing there? I'm like, where's that? I haven't got a clue what any names are. Corbridge, what's another one? Oh, anyway, whatever they are, just, you know, but if you talk to me about the corner on what's before and what's after, so like, obviously, I know Kurt Michael and a few places, but if you were trying to describe it, I'm just terrible with names, let's put it that way. What's your name again? Sarah? So, you know, it's one of them things. I'm rubbish with names, but we know the track. And mentally, you have to know every inch of it. I go to bed, every time I sip a cup of tea, I'm thinking about every moment of every day. I'm thinking about the Isle of Man. I love it. It's just ingrained in my soul, I think. Anyway, you definitely need to know where you're going. And it is a simple case of you have to do the homework. And mentally, for me, jumping from bike to bike and sidecar to whatever, it really is sort of well, it's bloody physical, let's face it, but it is much more mental in terms of, certainly for the sidecar, I need to know I'm safe, and for whoever's on the back is safe, and for the competitors, etc. It's all about safety. I want to keep coming back here for 25 years until I'm 60. I wish I was 60 in 25 years, that's a lie. But I want to keep coming back here for 25 years racing. I don't want to be a statistic. Don't get me wrong, accidents happen, we know the risks, and everyone keeps harping, it should be banned. Absolutely not. It's the only thing that actually makes sense in this world, that this is still going. It's a world that needs to revert back to that sort of era where just accept the fact that things happen in life. I could get hit by a bus going home from this interview tonight. Things happen. You've just got to accept it. People want to push the boundaries, jump off cliffs, do all that stuff. I want to race around the Isle of Man. Just accept it. It's what we want to do. No one's forcing us to do it. And I love it. And without it, honestly, we did retire from racing for about 2 years. And we probably had 7 marriage breakups. We had depression beyond depression. It was just horrific. And I genuinely need people to understand that it is a drug for us. It really is. Certainly for me, I just, if I haven't got that smell of petrol or whatever, the grip of a throttle in my hand, it really is hard work. The missus understands it, I'm sure, because I don't touch her like I touch a throttle.
So you mentioned the starting every race. I think, what was it, 2022 that first came on the horizon for you. I'm intrigued as to how that decision came about, because we obviously talked about you being on a solo machine and you mentioned sidecars, but at what point did you think, sidecars, I'll give that a go as well?
The sidecar side of things really came about because I love them in terms of watching them. So we went to Brands Hatch, I think it was, in whatever year, I can't remember. BSB. So BSB have support classes, whatever classes, super stock, etc., like I raced in. And obviously the sidecars there. And the sidecars are mental. I went to Paddock Hill to watch, and these things are Broadway, sideways going in, sideways coming out, bucking, weaving, doing whatever they're doing. They were absolutely incredible, and I was like, unfortunately the last race of the bloody day, so no one stays around to watch them, which is a shame, but to stand on top of Paddock Hill Bend watching them, you will never want to watch any other racing. It's just crazy. Yes, they did used to drop a little bit of oil occasionally and stuff, and obviously things do happen, that side of things, but last meetings I've been to where anything's been stopped for oil, it's always bloody solos, so I can actually say that now. It's all the solo races now. So anyway, we got into sidecars because I appreciated sidecars, again, being a fan of motorcycles. very early on in my racing career, saw them, absolutely was like, this is crazy, but never sort of understood what they were, never even seen one naked. And we went into the TT again 20 whatever year, 12, 13, 14, 15, well, I can't remember what it was. We were at the TT one year, parked in the paddock next to Gary Bryant, sort of just chatting away, borrowing tools like I do because I've got nothing myself. Said, look, you can have a look around your sidecar, and there it was in all its glory. It's Motec, it's electronics, it's engine, it's frame. To be fair, I actually prefer looking at them naked as such. When people see them racing past, they just see whatever colour bike, they see a flash go past of the fairings, but they don't appreciate what's underneath. And so we had this good look round this sidecar, and I was like, that's mental. Unfortunately, they have mental money though, that's the only issue. I was like, that's great, but we'll park that idea. But the idea of it came for racing in 2016. The idea came about because we bought a ZX-10 to race TT, and then I started riding for a team. I thought they were going to want me to do Superstock. They said, no, we want you on a Ducati. So I was like, well, they're providing the bike, this is great. I can use that money from the sale of the Kawasaki and put that towards this Shelbourne that we bought for introduction to sidecars. And it was really an introduction because you have to sort of buy one. No one's going to say like, Tim, can I borrow your £40,000 sidecar just to go and have a practice? No one's going to lend you. Well, I'll probably lend mine out to certain people, but not everyone, and yeah, we had to sort of buy it. But I sort of knew I was going to get into it. It's just depending on how much I was going to get into it. So we bought it, did a track day at somewhere, can't remember where we went, somewhere in Wales, and I was like, this is a go-karting on speed, this is crazy. I loved it. The sense of speed was immense, and the way it slides around and stuff, I could get used to this.
And was it always fairly certain for you that you wanted to be the one driving and not the passenger?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. I've done one lap as a passenger on the back, funnily enough, with Gary Bryant actually, and he said, jump on the back and you'll appreciate it as what the passengers do. And he was probably right, but me being me, I thought, well, it can't be that hard. Famous last words, I have to say.
And where did you go? Was it round here or was it?
Around the Isle of Man. Absolutely.
So you haven't done that yet? I'm just putting that out there.
That is definitely not happening, 100%. So we were over in France, so when we bought the sidecar, we sort of went to France to understand how it works. Val de Vienne, amazing track, brilliant week to sort of get my head around this sidecar. We was learning obviously how to drive it, and Gary said, well, look, jump on, do a session and appreciate what the sidecar passengers go through. And I thought, well, it can't be that hard. They make it look effortless, don't they? Let's face it. So he said, look, just sit in, don't move, just sit in. I'll drive round and you can just appreciate the G-forces and what they have to go through under braking, etc. And I thought, well, I'm pretty sure I can move, I'll be all right. And so first corner, right-hander, so down the start, finish straight into this sort of long hairpin, long back on yourself right-hander. I must have looked like a GP star. My helmet was almost on the side on the track on the inside. I was like, I look factory, and I'm sure there was a photographer. I wish there was. However, he sort of drove out the corner, not even hard. And as I moved to go back into the centre to then effectively move left for the next left-hander, I ended up at the back of the sidecar, legs dangling. Panic instilled itself immensely in my brain. I was like, this is it, I am dead. What are you doing? And he wasn't even driving it hard. It was just literally just drive out in probably third gear when he should have been revving the nuts off in second. And that was it. It was just all over. So we scrabbled back into this tray, and that is all it is, isn't it? You just sat on this bloody tray. And I just remember thinking, this is horrendous. I need this to stop. And we did one lap, and I got round to the pits. I did stay in for the lap in terms of, I sort of tapped him to say I'd had an issue, but actually I was just tapping him to say, just please stop, this is horrendous. But for me, it's all about being in control. Not that I'm a control freak, however, probably am a little bit when it comes to flying. I don't like flying. I know I'm in the RAF, but I hate flying as such because I'm not, again, in charge of the bars. And I've met riders that do want to go on the back. Tom Bryant was my passenger, who is a very good solo racer or rider. I've met lads that do enduro and stuff, and they want to get on as passengers. Tom Knight jumped on with me at Derby a few years ago. He's a phenomenal two-wheel racer and wants to go passengering. Are you mental? Well, he is mental, but they all are. However, for me, yeah, being control freaky Jack Russell, that is not for me. Bars, throttle, brakes, which I run far too much, in terms of safety. It's all about safety. No, but it's all about being in charge of the bike. But don't get me wrong, passengers, they control the bike in a very, very different way, but they are in charge of the bike to a certain degree as well. So it is definitely that sort of pairing of symmetry that gets that sidecar around the track as well as it does, and that's what you've got to appreciate, and that's what Gary, I'm sure, was trying to instill in me. But yeah, 100%, I'm a bar man, and that's it. Yeah, I like a bar, good bit of drinking.
So we said in 2022 you decided to start every race, and then you repeated that 23 and 24, and actually we know the TT race schedule changed, so you were up to 10 races. And I think it's really interesting that you talk about there is that thing about safety that's really instilled in you, but you also push yourself physically to the limit. How can you do that?
Badly. I haven't finished it yet. We've attempted it, got involved with sidecars for the longevity of racing the TT course. There was a backstory of I need to get around the TT course for the next 25 years. There's no way I can do that. I'm 43. I can't do this for 25 more years solo racing. Dave Magsden Migdal, how he keeps going at his age is phenomenal. So there's got to be a longevity goal of racing the TT course, and that's where the sidecar came in. I thought, well, these boys, there's not that many that are under sort of 40 involved in it, because it is an older man's sport in terms of they're so expensive to buy and maintain and everything else. So the midlife crisis kicks in. Let's get these bikes, and then eventually, freaking hell, let's get around the TT course. And that's how it sort of came to me as well, in terms of it's a this sort of drip feed of longevity was there. We got involved with the sidecars obviously for that reason, and then we approached the ACU and said, look, has anyone ever done every race? At the time it was an 8 race schedule, and they sort of came back to us and said, no, actually no one has, in terms of every race at the TT course. Another lad, Ernie Coates, had done 8 races at a TT, including sidecar. He was the passenger for his brother. Phenomenal. I think they got a 6th and a 10th or something stupid like that. They were brilliant. But yeah, he passengered and then raced another 6 classes. So he did 8 back in the day, but it wasn't every class at the same TT. I know it's a sort of cheeky play on words as such, but anyway, in our own right, it did change the next year. So we tried it in sort of 22, failed at literally the last hurdle on the senior race. For the sake of a bolt shearing, it was very much a case of disaster struck, and I was distraught. However, they changed the goalposts the next year, so it really didn't matter. If I'd done 8 in 22, I would have done 10 in 23 anyway, because they'd done this, they changed the goalpost. So genuinely, that was it. We were like, well, let's give it a go, let's keep that ball rolling. 22 was brilliant for the sort of media side of things, because like you say, I've actually had people come up to me in the paddock and say, what are all these people doing here? I'm like, well, what do you mean, what are we all doing here? And they're like, well, there's only 6 or 7 in the race, isn't there? Where'd you get that from? Well, that's all they show. People don't appreciate. Let me just say, I'm the massive everyone's fan. Like, I love anyone that takes the TT course. I am in awe of, because they have got every battle going in their head, financially, mentally, whatever it is. Anyone that gets that TT start line, they're battling anything and everything in their lives, and it is a massive achievement. But there is privateers out there, and they're phenomenal riders. They deserve some credit, some publicity, whatever it is. And that was sort of, for me, that was brilliant. We'd won the Manx Grand Prix, got nothing for it as such, but then again, there was other reasons behind it. I wasn't actually that good. But we're trying to be a sort of, not people's champion, I guess, but like, we're just trying to represent that there are lots of people out there, phenomenal riders, and they all deserve some recognition. They all struggle to get sponsors. They all, need as much support as they can to get to that start line. I'm living my dream, but I'm trying to sort of say that if there's any help out there for anyone, it needs to go to everyone. And if I do win the lottery, I will spread it across that paddock.
Just need to check that you do buy a ticket regularly.
Sadly not, however.
Oh, right, okay.
We will do. My goal is longevity of the TT course. Sidecar was my ticket to that, securing that longevity. And unfortunately, I can see it going, not through anyone's fault, but people don't get into it until their 40s. Majority. There's not that many that do beforehand. There's
a lot of young passenger talent though, and if we come into the Southern 100, we're speaking on the Friday after the Southern 100 2024 finished. Prime example is Jake Roberts, your passenger. He podiumed in the TT. You podiumed yesterday. There is a definite spark of interest there, and I think people do realise just how much of a spectacle and what goes in to making sidecar racing happen. You're absolutely right. To have Jake on board for the Southern 100, should we say, was an absolute honour. How did that come about? Just luck again. A lot of things happen in life where, obviously I knew Dave didn't do the Southern 100, or hadn't done, for a few years and whatever else, and I thought, well, spoke to Vicky and said, look, do you fancy 700? This is Vicky Cook, your passenger during TT. Yeah, absolutely. So Vicky done the 700 and Scarborough before I think she's won the 700 on the classic bikes, and she's done Scarborough before. So anyway, when we got involved, she didn't I don't want to be doing Scarborough and Southern 100, and that's it, that's fine. At the end of the day, my
sort of big key thing was TT. So we got involved and had a plan for TT, which was mega, but I did really miss the 700. We came over obviously on a solo last year, and I sort of wandered around the three-wheeling paddock, and I really was like, oh, I really want to be back here on three wheels. So it was what it was. Spoke to Vicky this year about doing 700 and Scarborough. Unfortunately, it's a firm no, fair enough. But we didn't have any plan in place. It was a simple case of just message Jake and said, look, are you fixed for anyone? Does Molly want to do 700, and is there any sort of scope for it? I knew Jake from when he was 3 or 4, I think it was, when we won the Manx in 2009. Met Jake when he was like a young tot, and he's not changed at all. He's still a young tot, and he's still young Jake, which is great, and he's a phenomenal passer, and we had a great Southern. And to say we got on the podium, yes, there was 2 that broke down in front, and you've got to finish to get on that podium. So fair play, we loved it. I think we took 4 or 5 seconds off our lap time, and we just had a great Southern 100 and really enjoyed it. And we're just, we've got him on for this weekend at ARA. We've got him on for Scarborough, so we can have a real, good time together and enjoy it. And that's the key thing, isn't it? We're not getting paid to do it. You've got to enjoy it, and we certainly do. It's great having Jake on board, and it was a massive honour, because there aren't many times you can say you've got a TT podium racer on your bike. That's pretty special. So yeah, I've got every respect for him. He's great. He's a good kid.
And you mentioned the ARA, and we've talked about the Andros Racing Association quite a lot in these podcasts, because a lot of the people, certainly from the Isle of Man that we talk to, have been through that, and having that grassroots organisation over here is just paying dividends. And I wonder, from your point of view as somebody who obviously doesn't live over here, what you make of that whole setup.
ARA is my season next year, actually. We've made the decision, again, just to get sort of Jake on board in terms of come across, and actually selfishly just to get across the Isle of Man more. I know it sounds a bit daft, but the more times I can get back to the Isle of Man, the better. And I think there's 6 rounds at the ARA, so we can use them obviously for TT signatures, bit of testing time, keep me over on the Isle of Man, massive tick there, and we can just, hopefully base ourselves within the Isle of Man for racing, if that makes sense. And my season is Scarborough's TT 700 and Manx Grand Prix. If we can do that as a season, my God, that is just absolute heaven. So yeah, I think the ARA are fantastic. I think the circuit's brilliant. They subsidise the entries for the guys coming across. It's a massively crazy event, because in terms of, it's the Isle of Man. You're still racing on the Isle of Man. The fans still come to you to, oh my God, there's a TT racer over there. So people still come over to you and sort of talk to you about the Isle of Man and TT and everything else. It's great. So yeah, I highly recommend it, because I think for what we spend at a short circuit in the UK, it's exactly the same over here. And if it keeps me over here, then it's always a benefit there. And
you'll be back for MGP?
We are, yeah. Sadly, we've lost our super bike ride in it. Unfortunately, the sponsor had to pull out, which is a shame, but it is certainly understandable. And there's always scope for anyone that's got a classic super bike. We've still got the entry in, so yeah, we're on the Manx Norton, the Izzard Racing Manx Norton, which we've had some very good results on in the past. I think we've rode it 4 or 5 years, and we've never been outside the top 7 when we finish. So if we can keep that sort of roll going, I mean, the team's fantastic, the bike's fantastic, and it's an absolute, again, when I started riding motorcycles, I didn't appreciate the fact that I just wanted to get hold of the throttle and go riding. And then you see all these Manx Nortons, RC30s, RC45s, all these bikes that are just iconic, stupendous bits of machinery. I never thought I'd ever get a chance to ride one. When we first started racing over here, and at the Manx Grand Prix, and the classic side of things was there, I was like, well, they're beautiful, loud and obnoxious, but beautiful. And I just thought, well, we're never going to get the opportunity. However, the opportunity came around, and I've ridden on some amazing bits of machinery, which is again a massive pleasure and an honour, and I take the privilege very dutifully. It's to ride those bits of kit around here is phenomenal.
It's obviously a little while away till TT 2025. I know I don't need to ask if we're going to see you in the start line again. Is the challenge still in your mind?
It's always going to be in my mind, but however, we are not doing it next year. We are having a little bit of a rethink, because
not doing the TT at all, or just the challenge? I was going to say. Oof.
Wow. please edit that out of the podcast. Did you just say never do that? I'm not doing TT. No, we are doing the TT. Obviously, unless work or whatever gets in the way, we'll be at the TT. However, we're not doing 10 races next year. I would like to put a little bit of money into a solo and a little bit of money into a sidecar, You know, if we'd run the super sport pace we'd run in practice, and obviously we were going quicker in the race anyway, we'd have had a good top 10 in that first race. Sidecar, again, we'd set a fairly decent lap time in practice. Again, we'd have probably pushed that in the race, so we would have made it into the top 10 there. So I want to push up the order, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't want to be the one horse pony that keeps trying 10. We've had a great bash at trying it, and on the budget we've done it with, and the team behind us and everything else, to be fair, we should never even got to the start line in a lot of the cases, where it was we very nearly made it to the finish line. And I'm immensely proud of everyone that got involved with it and supported me, and even in myself really, for trying it and getting as close as we did in both the 8 and the 10. But we don't want to be that, oh, Jack Russell's just trying to do 10 again. Yes, I want to do 10 because it gets me closer to the 100 starts quicker, but we'll get there anyway. We're here for another 25 years. But we want to be further up the order, put a bit of money into sort of 2 bikes rather than spreading ourselves thinly across everything. You know, show what we can do on a sidecar and a solo. And if we can get some sponsorship behind us and put some money into the bikes and make it competitive. I know I'm competitive. Put the right bike underneath me and we're up in the sharp end of the races, and that's what I want to do with sort of one solo, one sidecar, and just enjoy it. Not enjoy it, I mean, it's horrendously terrifying doing it, but just get out there and do it.
Well, Jack Russell, it's been brilliant talking to you, and we should say what a great radio voice as well. Have you been honing that especially?
I did, yeah. Sadly, we were still a little bit hungover after last night. I'm surprised it actually makes any sense. It probably doesn't, so apologies anyone's listening to this, but I'm glad you like the radio voice.
Michael Jack Russell, and now you know that it was a cricket player and not the dog that he's been nicknamed after. And also, honestly, incredible radio voice. I'm sure there's a sideline in podcast recording for him there. Thank you so much for listening to today's edition of Journey to a Dream, brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance. If you'd like to find out how you can get covered, you can visit their website, kawasaki-insurance.co.uk. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.